Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Bullish on Business. And do we have a treat for you today? I am talking with someone who is on a mission to make sure your voice is heard, not just in song, but in life. My guest is Aideen Riada. Hi, Aideen.
Hi,
Sorry
Rose.
about
Lovely.
that. Well,
I know
she
it's a tricky name. It's an Irish last name that means daughter of Reedy.
oh,
And I deliberately use that because it really makes me feel connected to my Irish heritage. My mother's actually American,
oh,
and she moved to Ireland to marry my dad. And then I moved back here to be closer to my mother-in-law, and my husband is American. So we're hopping from one island to the other.
absolutely. I love that. I just love all the international, and especially Ireland, who isn't a little bit Irish, and I spent a lot of time in Ireland too, and it's got a big part of my heart. And I know a lot of the people in the audience will resonate with that. So let's keep going. Through Aideen's coaching, workshops, and podcast conversations, she helps people move from nervous to natural so they can speak, sing, and show up with real confidence and authenticity. Aideen brings much psychology, spirituality, and voice training to unlock the mental and emotional blocks that keep people playing small. Whether it's singing on stage, speaking up at work, or simply telling the truth in a relationship, she believes your voice has value and that it's never too late to claim it. She's the founder of Confidence in Singing, creator of transformational voice programs and workshops, and the author of Discover Your True Value, where she guides readers to reconnect with their worth and their voice. We're going to dive into how your voice is connected to confidence, leadership, healing, and self expression, and why finding your voice might just be the biggest turning point in your life. Aideen, I am so happy you're here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's interesting because I started teaching with my work started with singing. And I realized because I have an interest in psychology that I wasn't teaching people to sing, I was helping them reconnect with their truth and giving them a sense of self-worth and self-acceptance that allowed them then to stand up and sing a song, not necessarily very well all the time, but to sing a song from the heart with a message that would really resonate with the listener. And it became quite a healing journey that they went on.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. I just when I met you the other day, it's been a couple months now, at a women's coffee meeting, I just had knew I had to have you on the podcast because so many people need this message. Confidence is equal to competence, in my opinion. And if you have the competence, then the confidence sometimes is still difficult to bring forward. And that's what you do. You help people out with that. So you gave us a little sneak peek with your origin story. You said it's not just about hitting the right notes when we chatted. It's about confidence, identity. When did you first realize that your voice work was really soul work for you?
Yeah, it was very quickly. And I really, really tuned into people. I found that as a facilitator, I would understand something about someone's thought process or their mindset by how they sang. So if someone was singing with a tightness in their throat or even speaking, I had a client around speaking who told me a story and said, since I had this, what was a massage, she said, my throat's been really tight. And within a few minutes, I was able to help her see that because the therapist had crossed a boundary and done something that she wasn't comfortable with, that she wasn't able to say anything about, that from that time, from that massage, over the next couple of days, her voice sounded different. And we have this, it's like a, it's a, a little bit of a clue. So when we notice our voice change, we need to pay more attention to that because it's another way that our body is trying to communicate with us and let us know that there's something we need to think about, something we might need to understand about a situation or about how we tried to communicate but didn't, or how we held ourselves back. So that's what I do is I can tune into those things and help people see what's really going on under the surface.
I
And then,
love that, and I'm going to make a note about that. That's really intense. For me personally, I'm going to make a note about that.
yeah, because
I
sometimes we're like, oh, I've got a sore throat all of a sudden, and I'm not sick. But there's reasons sometimes. We all know that if somebody is mean to us, we can feel a tightening in our throat. It's
Mhm.
our throat chakra as an energy center as well is being affected. So it is an energy that affects how we sound. And a lot of people don't realize this, but your voice can actually sound very different when you have confidence, when you've connected with your deeper message, when you know yourself, and when you have good boundaries and good self-awareness. Your voice changes, and it's sometimes people will move from a very shrill, quite high and a little bit breathy and not really sure of themselves, down to a much slower, more meaningful, paced tone, simply by going through a personal transformation.
Wow. Now I just can't wait till we get into how you do this. But because you brought up Ireland and your US journey, uh, you're originally from Ireland, like you said, and thank you for sharing that and being so authentic with us today. And now you're doing so much work with your clients in the United States. You mentioned that your family has deep roots between two the two countries.
Yeah.
How did the move change your work and your voice?
Yeah, it was hard. Everybody had a big shift during COVID. And so I moved to the US in 2020 to be closer to my mother-in-law, who is living with no family nearby. And I had a very successful business, mainly around singing, because Irish people understand the value of just singing for themselves, and they're a little bit more open to the idea of, oh, I'm just an ordinary person, but I have this one song that I sing. But when I came here to the US, and a lot of my Irish clients didn't want to be on Zoom, they weren't used to being in the online world. So, for me to actually continue with my mission, to help people find their voice, I had to go online, and I changed everything. And it did affect my confidence. You mentioned this earlier, how you can go from confidence to competence, and then your confidence gets a little bit shaken again. And at every lift or every step along the way, we question ourselves. So you can be the most confident person in the world, and then you decide, oh, well, I'm going to start writing articles for the paper. And suddenly you'll feel more insecure again, because we're not all confident in every area.
Right.
Far from it. So having that little bit of insecurity is not a bad thing. It's just an understanding that, oh, I need to either rehearse, I need to learn, I need support. And we know we shouldn't feel alone in that. We don't need to try and do these things completely on our own. And I think that that's really a key part of how I've worked so well with people is I've helped them feel safe to go through a transformation that feels a little scary.
Mm. That's awesome. You have a very interesting perspective, in my opinion, and you have noticed differences between how people in Ireland and people in the United States, you mentioned, think about speaking up and promoting themselves or even being visible.
Hmm.
Any fun or surprising cultural contrasts that you've noticed?
Now, my husband will actually mention this as well, how sometimes in Ireland there's an attitude that you shouldn't, share too much your success. You don't want to show off that you have more success than someone else. And that, this idea as well as if things aren't going well, that somehow you're failing. Whereas in the US, there's a stronger lean toward I'm learning and that,
Mhm.
oh, I've had a business and, oh, it failed, but now I have a new business and, oh, it failed again. So there's an attitude that you're kind of failing upward or failing forward. So I think Irish people, they're a little more quiet. They keep their successes a little more to themselves. And I think Irish and Americans do need to consider celebrating their success a little more, bringing us all into that success. And I'm a big believer in if I have even a small part of someone's journey, that I feel part of their cheerleading squad and it makes me feel invested in someone else's success. And the more we include others in our journey, the more we all feel like we're succeeding and celebrating.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's surprising about I think it's interesting that Irish people are confident to sing. And that I just love these different nuances that you're bringing out between the cultures because sometimes we really don't, we kind of, especially when we have English speaking um, countries that are different countries, sometimes we expect us to be more alike. And I think that that's really interesting.
Well,
So,
it changed in the US, I think, because we had so many cultures that all moved into the US in fairly short amount of time. So everybody's coming from a different cultural background here in the US. And a lot of those cultural things were suppressed so that you would fit in. So you wanted to become an American. You didn't
right.
want to be just Irish anymore. You didn't want to just be Polish or just any other nationality. And so in Ireland, I mean, we only got the TV and electricity in the 1950s, right? And so there was a tradition of Irish people using music and singing in the home as entertainment. And we also had the British um, kind of influence, which would have tried to suppress a lot of Irish cultural customs. So when there was a resurgence in Irish cultural, in music and stuff like that, that became like our rallying cry. It was like our rebellion. And we
Mhm.
wanted to reconnect with being Irish and having our Irish stories, because Irish are known for great storytelling as well. And so it's a smaller place as well. That makes it easier to hold on to certain cultural strengths.
Mhm. Wow. I read the book Exodus a long time ago, and not Exodus, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, it's the same author, Leon Uris. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out on the name of the Irish book. Connor Larkin. Have you Trinity.
I
Trinity.
found a Facebook post and it was like, what books should I read about Ireland, right? Of
Oh,
course, I don't read
Trinity.
that many books about Ireland. I'm from Ireland,
Okay. So
but
let
people
me
did
tell you.
list those authors, right?
Oh,
And I was like,
anyway, his name is Leon Uris, and it was a bestseller. It's an old book, but it's called Trinity. And it's one of probably my second favorite book after Pillars of the Earth, which is about a British cathedral. But Trinity is amazing, and it talks a lot about the British issues and the years of oppression, and it's just amazing. But what I want to switch gears to a little bit here, Aideen, is your business. So can we please like go into the depth of your business, how you do it, how can someone reach out to you? Can you take us through your coaching and your singing coaching and your voice coaching? I'm just going to turn it over to you, and if you would just give us a deep dive on all of that.
absolutely. Well, here's the great thing. It's your voice is yours and no one else gets to be you, right? So when I work with anyone, I help them understand their value. And the value of your voice, it's something you cannot even imagine yet. Like in 5 years' time, by harnessing more of your voice, and whether that's to do with your messaging, your speaking in relationships, or even your branding in your business, that when we get those things right and it comes from the most authentic and most aligned part of you, it can have a huge positive impact. The way that I do it is really fun because I started with singing, I can make working with a voice playful and easy, and we do silly noises. Or if you have energies that are kind of bothering you, then I go down a more spiritual route and I bring in mantra, and we might talk about guides and your ancestors and even the ancestral line. I know we just spoke about the Irish ancestral line, but we bring so many um, attitudes that aren't ours. They're our parents or our grandparents, and we want to release some of that. And so a lot of the work I do is about identifying and releasing the blocks to being seen and heard. When we see it clearly, it's very easy to let those things go. So I use a method called Awaken Your Voice method. And what I realized was that there's a bridge between the inner voice, what's going on in your mind, and what's kind of already kind of playing in your head, and the outer voice, which we are using every day. And that bridge is self-acceptance and self-love. If you don't accept what you really think, like if you don't accept how you feel in the moment, you can't express it. And I believe that there's so much treasure in each individual because we all come from a different background, different experiences. We have a different wisdom that we've gleaned in our lifetime. And it doesn't matter if you're early in your journey or if you're a very wise old soul, there's always someone watching you. There's someone who's noticing your journey. And so even if you're a mom, you've got three kids, you hardly leave the house, when you go on a journey with your voice, your kids are going to get a big benefit. And the moms at the school are going to see a change in you. And your siblings or your mom or your dad, like people who are close to us will see a change. And that sometimes is all we want. We just want that little small group of people to feel inspired, or they can feel a little bit put out, but they're also going to feel like they've been given permission to be different too. And I
Mm,
think that's really important.
mm.
That's
Oh,
what I do. I like try to ignite that in people. This feeling like it's okay to be me. In fact, it's okay. I'm pretty lovely just as I am. And when you start expressing that loveliness in the world, I think great, really fun things can happen. And you might take up a hobby, you might start a business. Like it's small things. Everybody's on a different journey.
absolutely. Wow. So, how many clients are you working with for voice and confidence versus how many do you work with learning how to be a singer?
So here's the fun part. I think I attract people because of the singing often, and then they go deeper. So, for instance, I had a client found me through my website, based in Seattle, and she wanted to learn a song from scratch, no previous singing experience, and to record it for her wedding within 2 months. And she did, and I've done a podcast episode about her. Her name is Karen, so I would recommend you have a listen into that. But during that journey, she did come to me with, I don't know why my husband or my fiance and I are having this problem. Why am I getting married? And da 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 da. And so when we are working on just singing, I'll be bringing in the voice coaching. And
Mm,
when we're working with the voice coaching, I'll be bringing in sound and singing. So they all go hand in hand. And I think it's often about 50-50, but I always see a little bleed over in both
mhm,
in both ways. Most of my
mhm.
clients have see, the thing about the voice is it doesn't lie. So if someone could come to me for a singing lesson and they're choked up, I have to ask them what's going on.
Mm,
And so then it becomes a deeper, a deeper conversation.
right.
So
More,
yeah, they
more
interact with each other quite a lot.
Oh my gosh. Voice trauma and healing. One of the things that I noticed is that you often share how voice work can help people through self-doubt, shame, and past trauma.
Hmm.
What does healing actually look like when somebody works with you? Like,
So when I started my business and I was featured on TV in Ireland, my brother said to me afterwards, like, I didn't know you did therapy. But the reason he said that was that I attracted people who had some form of a trauma. So a woman whose husband had passed by suicide, a guy who was, he was in cancer remission, a woman who's had thyroid surgery, and they were saying, "Oh, this is why I decided to come," right? And then through the using the voice, they and choosing their songs as well. So here's an interesting thing. If you decided that, okay, I'm going to learn to sing for fun, and then you tell me what your song is, the song takes you on a healing journey because you will pick a song. If the song that's calling to you, the song that you're listening to mostly right now is trying to say something to you.
Wow. That's so
And
cool.
yeah, I mean, we know this, right? We know we get attracted to certain songs or even certain movies, but we hardly ever ask, what is this trying to tell me? Why am I watching movies about romance, or why am I watching a movie about overcoming insurmountable obstacles, right? But when we're watching those movies, we're listening to those songs because we are gaining something from that. They're teaching us something.
Mhm.
So I will draw attention to the lyrics in the song. I will ask people to tell me which part of the song is really what drew them to it,
Mhm.
why they might think that that was the case. And I've had some clients that they sang sad songs for like the first 3 years that they worked with me, and only then did they start singing about happy things because they were just processing through the singing, which
Wow.
I think is really a beautiful realization.
Well, a lot of people find one-on-one, but freeze on a Zoom call. They really do well with one-on-one in meetings or on stage. What one practical technique they can maybe use today to go from shaky and nervous to more grounded and natural?
Well, the first thing, and you'll hear about this in yoga, is your breath. So don't forget that sound is literally air vibrating, air vibrating, right?
Mhm.
So if your body starts to feel tense, then the air and will start to, you won't have good control. So I would say to people, no matter whether you're speaking or singing, if you get a moment, you can sigh because a sigh resets your diaphragm, which is the muscle that controls your lungs. So
Mhm.
even if you breathe in very slowly right now and release very slowly right now, you'll start to feel a little calmer. And from there, just try to leave some space. I believe communication happens in the spaces between the words.
Mhm.
If I keep talking very quickly and I don't give you any chance to hear what I'm saying, and yet can't ask me a question, and I'm not sure whether you're listening to me, and the words are keeping going, going, and going, you don't have any time to digest what I'm saying. So communication is about digesting the words, the meaning of the words. And when I'm working with people, and this I think is one of the top tips I give, especially to singers or speakers, is try to imagine that the meaning or the message of what you're saying is the most important thing. It's not about you,
Mhm.
it's about what you have to share. That's the important thing. So you're just a messenger. And in that way, sometimes you put your heart into the meaning of what you're saying, and that takes you out of your self-consciousness a little and makes you a little more present. So
Oh,
that's
that's
what.
smart. That's
Mm,
so smart. I love that because you get so caught up on, how are they going to perceive me? How do I look? Did I wear the right clothes today? Is my hair all right?
yeah.
You forget all about the message. It's
I know.
so,
And you know what we do afterwards as well is then we go over it again and again and we're like, did I do it right? What should I have said differently? And we're being so hard on ourselves,
Mhm.
you
I
know?
truly. Well, psychology, that's so interesting that you bring up psychology. And you mentioned speakers. Do you help people who are actually going to be giving speeches on large stages like keynote addresses?
I I don't normally. Actually, I'm kind of the step before that. I'm for you if you would love to do that, but you have your own internal blocks and you haven't quite figured out what you would say.
Mm.
Because for me, as I've mentioned, it's about reconnecting with your truth and your message and your authentic self. And you'll never be able to communicate that until you really understand what that is. And you're given a space to explore that, a safe space to explore that. So I would be a step before a typical speaking coach. However, I obviously have the skills to help someone to craft a speech and to kind of do it naturally. But I feel like if you get the other piece right, that most of that will happen with more ease. Because if you're trying to do it by, add a comma here and have a pause, like that's a lot of stuff to think about. If it comes from an inside part of you, like a deeper part of you, you'll find that you can improvise easier. You know what that message is, and you'll have a way to speak about it that can feel more natural, and it can change then in the moment depending on who you're speaking with.
I think you're right. I think you really are right. I think you're talking to me today. You've blended psychology and singing and communication coaching. What are one or two psychological patterns you see over and over again that tend to silence people's voices?
Well, I think that self-criticism thing that I just spoke about is really important. We feel we don't want people to see us because they're going to see something that you don't want to show. They're going to see your vulnerability. There's huge freedom in saying this is me, vulnerable, warts and all, whatever it is. So here's one client. She came to me to sing a song, and she would be so meek that we did an in-person class, and I told her to give a dirty look to everyone in the class. So she just went around and she went, just squinted her eyes at everyone. Just like, it's a boundaries thing
Mhm.
because we feel like people can kind of send us a vibration or an energy where they can, it can feel like they're attacking you, or you're imagining that. We need to push our boundary line out, and we need to start to feel safer in our own space, because the reality is that unless you if you don't have that boundary there, it's like a little eggshell. You could imagine your aura being surrounded by light or something. When we use strategies or visualizations like that, it actually feels safer to be in your body. And that's an important part of psychologically feeling stronger as well.
How did you ever become who you are? This is so unique. How did
This is what I love. This is what I want everybody to know. Each of us has a completely unique way of looking at life. But most of us, and myself included, are trying to do things a certain way. I was a very, very stubborn person until my 40s. I wanted to do this, this, and this, and I wanted it then. I wanted it at a certain time in my life. And I had to completely surrender. So this is where the spiritual side of my work started. When I started to realize none of the thing that I'm doing is actually very, it's not a foundation. It's not strong. It's not lasting. And I had to kind of go, okay, what should I be? Is there some guidance I can get here? And I made a request. I said, I'd like to be doing more with music. I'm open now, right? For the first time in my life, I said, okay, I'm open. And 3 weeks after making this prayer or intention, I heard a literal voice in my head. And I don't know if everyone would hear it as a voice. They might see it or they might realize something. But I heard do a singing workshop for adults.
Mm.
And I knew that it was guidance because I didn't want to do it. I did not want to do a singing workshop for adults because that was teaching, and my mom's the music teacher in the family. But this time I reminded myself I had asked for the help. And I decided that I would test that idea. And this is a lot of people feel like when they get guidance or when they have an idea that they need to think it the whole way through, and then they'll decide if it's the right thing or the wrong thing. But actually, usually it's through taking small steps in a certain direction that we figure out if it's going to work or not. And I mean, we call it market research in business.
Mhm.
But we don't do that in our everyday life. We feel like we need to have it sort figured out before we start. But I decided I'm going to just take one step. I knew that there was a guy that had a venue that he knew people, that he would be a little bit supportive. And with his help, Declan Cosgrove was his name, I was able to run my classes and have them full basically from the very beginning in those first few months. And within 6 months, I had a name for my business, I had a Facebook page, but I just started with one singing workshop for adults. I just followed that voice and did one. And it's been the most fulfilling journey. And so it's a completely unique way of doing things
It
because
is. It's so
I'm not
cool.
following anyone else's idea. I'm
No,
just
you're not. This is so amazing. It's the trailblazer. Do you do the singing workshops up in Traverse City now?
I haven't done in-person stuff. I'm hoping that the local university will take me on for courses because I don't know a lot of people in the area. It made it difficult for me to see that promoting it would get me anywhere because like I didn't have someone to help me get started like I did in Ireland. So I'm hoping to do in-person stuff through NMC. I've applied and they've said they're interested, but I also do my classes. I do a weekly class as well here
Online.
online. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Leadership. Let's talk a little bit about that. You work with people who are stepping into bigger leadership roles. How does improving your relationship with your voice change the way that you lead at work, in business, or even with your family?
So this is something that I'm in a constant growth with as well, okay? We meet people and they can be intimidating, right? I have maybe a new boss. That boss is very critical, very attention detail, focused, not shy about giving you feedback that can be harsh.
Yeah.
And then you feel shut down. You don't feel like you can express yourself. And a lot of people the opposite direction when they hit a roadblock like that. But really, life is about constant communication and negotiation. And sometimes I find that an email can be a great way to test the waters. So if I write the email of what I want to say, and then I'll be like, is that the right tone? Is that the way I want to say things? A text can be a hugely powerful way of expressing ourselves. And even like the word ouch.
Hmm.
So somebody says something, they go, "Oh, you got your haircut. I preferred it the other way." And you can just say, "Ouch, I like it," right? So we need to find words and we need to rehearse. It's like in music, we know that we have to practice, we know we have to rehearse, but we can actually rehearse phrases like, "Oh, that hurt my feelings," and say it in a nice tone of voice, not like, "Ugh, you hurt my feelings," you
Right.
know. So there's ways to communicate. When we want to lead, we are actually pushing back. We are saying, "Here's another option." It isn't the status quo. Leadership is about going in a different direction or tweaking a direction.
Mhm.
And to do that with confidence and to say it at the right time, because timing is hugely important with any form of communication, to say it to the right person, to say it in the right way, those are things that you can learn, but through doing. So
Mhm.
you're going to start off, it might be that you'll practice better boundaries with your best friend first. And you might say, "Hey, you said you were going to call me and you didn't, and it hurt my feelings."
Mhm.
Okay, and then you're find you've been able to say that, so you can say it at work. You can say, "Hey, to your boss, I felt that I was perfect for that role or that opportunity, and I was sorry you didn't consider me for that." And we have to be able to find ways to speak up for ourselves. Anybody who's speaking up is a leader. It doesn't
Oh,
mean that you don't have to be the CEO. A lot of people are leading from behind or they're leading by example. And it has to be your way of doing it. Can't be someone
well,
else's.
from what I can see, you have really started out in psychology. Your mother's a teaches singing, so you've always, I think, probably have always sung, being
Mhm.
from Ireland, and you have a lot of growth. What's next for you?
Well, I am constantly reevaluating and I hate it. Dana, who likes to reevaluate? I'm like I throw myself into I don't usually do things step by step. But right now I'm tr really trying to integrate more into my local community because when I moved into Michigan and I live in a rural part of Michigan, about a half an hour from a main town, and I haven't made as much of an effort as I need to. So that's a big part of it. I have a lot of things that I'm doing with my online business, like my voice summit, that I just want to keep moving forward. And then I'm going to be releasing a song in before Christmas this year. I'm releasing an Irish singer-songwriter song called Katie. So for me, it's about not dropping the ball on the things I care about, while also being a little more practical and being a little more integrated into this place where I
Well, I
live
think everyone would be very excited
right
to have
now.
you join join. I know I'm going to talk to you about going to Oops. Have you ever thought about going to Oops?
I have no idea what Oops is, but I would love to find out.
Well, it's the Office of Possibilities, and we meet every Tuesday in Traverse City. And a lot of the people, if you've watched Bullish on Business podcast, I would say that I've done about 100 of these podcasts, and they're probably 30% of the people that have been on my podcast are entrepreneurs and people like you that are coaches or starting business, doing things creative, interesting. And so I think you'd be a star at that group. So let's talk about music, spirit, and everyday life. You weave spirituality, music together in a beautiful way, obviously. How do you personally use singing, mantra, and sound in your own daily life to stay aligned and so confident? And you really are. You just really bring, but it's not haughty, it's really authentic. And so, how do you do that? How do you keep it in your everyday?
I was thinking about this the other day because when I when I was about in my late 30s, I moved to London for a year or two to become a singer, and it didn't work out. And I ended up moving town and moving back in with my mom, and I was at my lowest of low. That was my rock bottom. And what I found at that point was mantra meditation. But more importantly, I think it was the people that I found that did the mantra meditation. So I had an immediate teacher in my local area and a teacher in India. And in India and in mantra, they have this idea lineage, right? And no, but people these days don't really consider this, how important a loving grandparent who cares about you and who, roots for you, how important that person is to you and how important all of our connections are. Some of us are brought up in communities with a lot of good interconnections like that, and some of us aren't. So for me, was feeling a little lost because I wasn't really connected to my church situation in Ireland. I needed something, and my teachers are still in my life. Like they're at the periphery now because I've built a lot of the practices that I've done over the past 11 years have made me strong. And mantra is a part of my everyday life. And to me, we call on anything to embody those things, not to just praise. It's like, if you're Christian, if you're Catholic, you might say a prayer to say the Blessed Virgin Mary. But actually, what I believe now is, and this might not sit well with everyone, but I believe that we're asking for the blessing of those qualities in our life. So with the Blessed Virgin Mary, we're asking for purity, we're asking for forbearance and patience. And in the Indian tradition, we have deities that are good at removing obstacles. Archangel Michael, I would have, ask to become a protector, to ask for the protection and then ask to embody the qualities. Like anyone that we look up to, even if it's a sports hero, they have qualities, and when we revere them and when we honor them and when we praise them, we can ask to be like them. And so that's why I feel confident, is because I'm not drawing on Aideen's little personality confidence. I'm calling on what I would feel are friends in spirit, my well-wishers in spirit, and that includes my own grandmother, who is a big influence in my music. And a lot of us just need to remember where your power and your confidence used to come from and reconnect in with those people if you can, and recognize who is giving you strength,
Mm.
because we often take those things for granted.
Another completely unique perspective. You are a star. So let's do a call for action to our listeners. For for a person listening who thinks, well, my voice really doesn't matter, I'm not a singer, I'm not a leader, um, and or maybe it's too late, I'm older. What would you love to say directly to that person right now?
It's definitely never too late. It's never too late. A lot of the people I work with are older. Um, it's our responsibility to do what we can with who we are. Okay, we get this one life. You get to be you. You get to be you. And you may not see your value right now, but you know someone in your life who does see it. And sometimes when we're feeling low or insecure, we avoid those people. You know, you could have a great friend that's always encouraging you to write that book that you wanted to write, or who's encouraging you, in your business, and then you stop talking to them. Don't do that. Like lean on the people around you and start to allow yourself be reflected back because we're all mirrors for each other. And you deserve to have people in your life who see you. And there are probably one or two people in your life that you may not have noticed. And if you need to reach out to someone, if you need support, banded vision for you, then hire a coach or someone that's going to be able to help you with that because it's so, so important. I think if we all stood more in our power, the world would change dramatically. And I'm not saying that you have to, raise money and, start, campaigning for president of the, but I sure wish more people were willing to, to take
Right.
those steps because we don't know. It could be president of the school board of management or something, but we're needed more than we realize. I mean, people can get by without us. Like I know from me with my singing, I kind of ask myself, would my family care if I stopped singing? And I don't think they would care because they can be happy, but they let me choose what would make me happy.
Oh,
So I'm the one who has to go, singing makes me happy. So that's why I'm doing it. And then they'll happily cheer me along. But nobody really sees what's inside you. You have to reveal that and reveal it to the people that you know already love you. Because someone's supportive in
well,
our circle, I believe it.
I definitely want to get into your on your Facebook or your pages, your Facebook page, your Instagram,
Mhm.
your find out more about how we can engage personally. And I'm sure everyone else is like me who's watching you today onto this podcast, Aideen. Thank you so much for this beautiful, vulnerable, and powerful conversation. Every time you talk about the voice, not just the sound of it, but the soul of it, you remind us that confidence isn't something we perform, it's something we come home to. Your insights today were a gift. And for everyone listening, if something stirred in you, the listener, and if you felt that little nudge saying, I think my voice has more to say, follow that. This is your moment to connect with Aideen, join her programs, or explore her book, Discover Your True Value. Head over to confidenceinsinging.com or listen to her podcast called Resonate. Trust me, your future self will thank you. And as always, thank you for tuning in. And before I wrap it up, I want to give Aideen a moment to give her any final thoughts or words of encouragement for our audience?
You've got this. But you don't have to do it alone. So take a step and reach out for encouragement. I think that'll
Absolutely.
take you far.
If today's episode inspired you, share it with someone who's ready to step into their own voice. Because when one person finds their voice, the whole world gets a little louder and a little braver and a lot more honest. I'm Rose Odette, and this has been another episode of Bullish on Business. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking up, and keep believing that your voice has value because it always does. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and like. And I hope that you come back and visit me in about a year so we can see how your journey has progressed, Aideen.
Would love to. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you
thank you
everyone for
very much, and
listening.
we'll see you next time. Bye.